Well, hello there, everybody, and welcome to the main object big book study of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am an alcoholic. My name is David. Hello, hello, hello. And we're going to start off as we normally do. I've asked our friend Linda to read the AA preamble, and I will bring that up momentarily. And there we go.
Here we are. Hi, good morning. I'm Linda, and I am an alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
Linda, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And as I think everybody knows, there might be some new people here. Um, we are a line by line big book study. And before I get too far ahead of myself, I jumped ahead a little bit. So, why don't we connect with our higher powers? And we'll start with the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. As I mentioned, we are a line by line big book study. Our purpose is to go through the book slowly, unlock the power that is there. I've often found that by going slowly through the text and really sort of savoring each sentence, sometimes each word, what happens is there is an understanding that opens up that really turns, for me, the big book into a powerful tool for sharing this message and informing my sobriety. So hopefully some of you are finding that same thing. So just another part of what we do is we categorize the text as we go along into 5 categories. Most of you know that already, but for those who may not, uh, those 5 categories are questions, directions and explanations, promises, warnings, and history. The colors you see there are what I do is I highlight it because if you want to be honest about it, because I have this horrific obsession with office products, so any excuse to use an office product. But seriously, what that does is it makes it easy to then locate a promise, locate an explanation, and not just for my benefit, but ultimately it all comes down to sharing this with another person. And so our format is I'll talk on the text until about 7 o'clock, and then we'll open it up for questions, discussion, comments, what have you. Also, FYI, I want everyone to know the meeting is being recorded, and but I only record my part because I don't want anybody to feel self-conscious about their comments being out there for posterity. And we also archive our meetings on YouTube, so there'll be a link in the chat as well. And what I'm going to do now, just before I forget, is I'm going to post, because there are some definitions today and there are some links. So I'm going to post those and then we'll get started. Okay, there we go. Bunch of links. Here's some more links. Okay. And as I mentioned earlier, we are starting on page 55, and we're at the bottom. We've been going through we agnostics. We have been seeing, Bill has been pointing out how logic really doesn't serve us. It serves us well with remedying a lot of our problems that we face, but not alcoholism. For that, we need what's called a vital spiritual experience. And so he's really made a strong argument throughout these pages for the need to let go of our intellect and open up to just a very raw, almost visceral experience with our higher power. And in order to drive that home in a very meaningful way, he actually now shares we're going to end this chapter with a story of somebody who actually had a spiritual awakening. And so we are, as I said, on the bottom of 55, and it starts out in this book. You will read the experience of a man who thought he was an atheist. His story is so interesting, some of it should be told now. And I have that as just explanation or direction. But before we go in depth with the rest of it, who are they talking about? They're talking about one of the earliest members of Alcoholics Anonymous, a gentleman named Fitz Mayo. And when he says, and there we go, and I put a link to what I'm posting now in the big book. And Fitz was there pretty much from the very beginning. They think that I was reading something on Fitz, and they're thinking that he was, well, he wasn't AA number 3 because that was Bill D in Akron. Fitz was in New York, and one of the first people to get sober in New York was a gentleman named Hank, and Hank P., who had a lot to do with bringing the big book into being. And then right after Hank, like days after Hank, they 12-stepped Fitz. And so anyway, this is Fitz's story. And again, there are, I think I put like 4 links or so to information on Fitz, including his story, Our Southern Friend, which is also one of the few stories that's made it through all 4 editions of the book so far. So we'll see if it makes it to edition number 5. So again, his story is so interesting. Some of it should be told now. This next part, next sentence, I have as a reward. His change of heart was dramatic, convincing, and moving. And so, on to 56. Our friend was a minister's son. He attended church school where he became rebellious at what he thought was an overdose of religious education. I actually don't have that highlighted. I'm taking that as history. However, the rest of this paragraph I have highlighted in pink for a warning, and that is for years thereafter, he was dogged by trouble and frustration, business failure, insanity, fatal illness, suicide. These calamities in his immediate family embittered and depressed him. Post-war disillusionment, ever more serious alcoholism, impending mental and physical collapse brought him to the point of self-destruction. One of the things, just as a little bit of a background, when they say post-war disillusionment, I think most of us are aware, or some of us may have even I don't know if anybody was around at that time, but we might be aware that right after World War II, there was a boom. You know, the economy was great. There was a lot of innovation. There were all kinds of social reforms that helped people, and this was not the case after World War One. After World War One, which is what they're talking about here with post-war disillusionment, and there's a link to it in the chat. After World War One, it was just the opposite. Things got much worse for people, and I don't know exactly why that is. But I know that there was a lot of disillusionment and a lot of cynicism because the thought was we fought and we sacrificed for a better world, and the world's not better. It feels worse. And so there was that cynicism and that anger was clearly affecting our friend here. So it brought him post war disillusionment, ever more serious alcoholism, impending mental and physical collapse brought him to the point of self destruction. So he was really on a downward spiral. The next sentence I have as explanation. One night, when confided in a hospital, he was approached by an alcoholic who had known a spiritual experience. Actually, that's direction, and it's clearly a indication of our 12th step. This next sentence with the quotation is a warning. Our friend's gorge rose as he bitterly cried out, "If there is a God, he certainly hasn't done anything for me." I looked up gorge, and gorge rising is it's an idiom. It's a expression, and it just means anger coming up, and it actually comes from Hamlet of all places. So Bill's getting a little literary there when he's recounting the story. So anyway. I think the most important part is not not me sharing the literary reference, but sharing how the 12th step call worked. Because we're going to read in a few lines that Fitz had a major spiritual awakening. Okay. And he was sober. And I'm going to, spoiler alert, okay? He had a major spiritual awakening, and he stayed sober till the end of his life. However, there's something I didn't realize until recently. So, one night when confined in a hospital, somebody does a 12th step call on this guy. He says, "If there is a God, he certainly hasn't done anything for me." The 12th step call ends. If I'm the 12 stepper, am I thinking this was a success or a failure? I'm thinking this was a failure. And if you're like and if I'm the 12th stepper, if I'm the AA member, I'm either leaving thinking, what is it with that guy? What's his problem? Some people are just too sick to get this thing. Or I'm thinking, oh, geez, what did I do wrong? I should have, you know, I should have not like hit the punchline as hard as I did when I was telling all those jokes, you know. But here we go, and the rest of this paragraph is a promise. Actually, the rest of this page is a promise. So it's all in blue. But later, alone in his room, he asked himself this question: is it possible that all religious people I have known are wrong? So our 12-step friend planted a seed that could only be processed by Fitz when he was alone. While pondering the answer, he felt as though he lived in hell. Then, like a thunderbolt, a great thought came. It crowded all else. Who are you to say there is no God? He is having, I'm going to go through the end before I dive into that, but it's clear that he is experiencing intense ego deflation, and he is feeling very small in comparison to the greatness of God. This man recounts that he tumbled out of bed to his knees. In a few seconds, he was overwhelmed by a conviction of the presence of God in capitals, capital P for presence, and of course with G for God. It poured out through him with the certainty and majesty of a great tide at flood. So it was completely overwhelming, this experience. The barriers he had built through the years were swept away. He stood in the presence, capital P, of infinite power and love. And you can see it's all capitalized there. So, an immense spiritual presence. He stood in the presence of infinite power and love. He had stepped from bridge to shore. Some of you will remember, if you were here a couple weeks ago, what he's talking about there, bridge to shore, is back on page 53, where if you just want to jump back there for a second, they're talking about faith, and Bill says on 53, we couldn't duck the issue. Some of us had already walked far over the bridge of reason toward the desired shore of faith. And what his point with the bridge to shore analogy is that reason and logic will only get us so far. But at some point in our walk with God, the leap that we need to make is a leap that can't be explained by a formula, by logic, by reason. It has to defy explanation and go beyond our limited human understanding. So back to page 56. He had stepped from bridge to shore. For the first time, he lived in conscious companionship with his Creator. Just notice also the sort of, I'm going to use a fancy word, the juxtaposition between the depths of the ego deflation and the despair and the almost spontaneous regeneration into a new spiritual awareness. And Bill often refers to, or he refers to it here as William James' Varieties of Religious Experience. And if anybody's ever tried reading it, it is a very tough read. But it recounts it recounts a lot of stuff, but it recounts histories in the lives of the saints, and what we see time and time again is this ego deflation and despair is followed by a new awakening, a spiritual transcendental moment. And we definitely see that. We saw that with Bill, and we see that now with Fitz. And I'll step away from the enticing soapbox there, but I will say my impulse has often been when I'm confronted with a newcomer who is in despair, I want to build them up. I want to give them hope. And I think that it's important to give them hope. But sometimes what I have found is I have given them hope not because that's what that person needs right at that moment. It's because I'm uncomfortable with their negative or painful emotions. It's not my it's not my 12th step instinct that wants to build them up. It's my codependence. And so it's actually a character defect on my part. And there is, I know in my history, and we see it here, there is something to be said for experiencing the depths of the results that our disease takes us to. So that's enough for the soapbox. Thus was our friend's cornerstone fixed in place. Another, and we'll see more of these, stonework analogy. Okay, remember we're building an arch, the pathway, all of that. And so thus our friend's cornerstone was fixed in place. The cornerstone of his sobriety is right there in that relationship with God. No later vicissitude, easy for me to say, vicissitude. And vicissitude means alteration. So no later change has shaken it. His alcoholic problem was taken away. Think about the implications of what they're saying there. The problem is gone. And for anybody who's uncomfortable with that thought, I'm going to warn you, Bill then doubles down. That very night, years ago, it disappeared. Save for a few brief moments of temptation, the thought of drink has never returned. And at such times a great revulsion has risen up in him. Seemingly, he could not drink, even if he would. Think about that. What he's saying is that even if he had the impulse to drink, his spiritual relationship formed a barrier between him and, like a firewall, between him and that drink. That's the kind of power Bill is talking about here. God had restored his sanity. A clear reference or connection to our second step. And then we have a question. What is this but a miracle of healing? And then some explanation and direction. Yet its elements are simple. That part's in green. The next two questions, or I should say, the next question's in green and then part of the next one. Circumstances made him willing to believe. So, again, it's that thing about sometimes we can do a disservice to alcoholics by depriving them of the negative impact of the journey that got them here. He humbly offered himself to his Maker. Look at what they're saying here, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, that to me is direction. He humbly offered himself to his Maker, and then we have a
David, could I
reward.
ask you to repeat? Could I please ask you to repeat that? Don't deprive the alcoholic. How did you say that? That was so
Of the
important. I was writing that
negative
down.
consequences of the journey that got him or her here. So look at this sentence here and how it's laid out. He humbly offered himself to his Maker. That's direction. And I think it's an important direction for all of us. And he's really talking about step 3 there. Then he knew. And he's talking about he had a connection that gave him a visceral, lived experience of his higher power. And I thought about this. He humbly offered himself to his Maker. I mean, if you were going to condense the program of Alcoholics Anonymous into one sentence, there it is. Because what Bill's saying is once we humbly offer ourselves to our Maker, we know. And that, I don't want to say knowledge, but that experience, that lived experience of the higher power is the salvation we are looking for the relief of alcoholism. Now, the thing is, I know that makes it sound real simple, but for a guy like me, I need to work steps, work with a sponsor other people, go, 6, 7 meetings a week. And that allows me just to brush up against humbly offering myself to my Maker. Okay? So I don't want to create the impression that it's like, oh, you just okay, I humbly, offer myself. Boom. I wish it were that easy. Even so, God has restored all of us to our right minds. There's a reward. To this man, the revelation was sudden. Another reward. Some of us grow into it more slowly. And that's a direction or explanation. That's in parts in green, but then the rest of it is in blue for a reward. But he has come to all who have honestly sought him. Let's just take that in for a moment. He has come to all who have honestly sought him. When we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us. Exclamation point. What a place to leave this chapter about. What's the name of the chapter? We Agnostics. So where did we start out in this chapter? And where are we now? When we humbly offer ourselves to him, he discloses himself to us. And with that, I'm going to leave it right there.